Hi guys, and welcome back to the Backstage Bikini podcast with your hosts Grace and Jade. And we have a lovely guest that I'm saying I've known you for a little while, Beatrice, but I've had the pleasure of working with B for a little bit in terms of my posing. But we have IFBB Pro Olympian Beatriz Biscaia on the podcast. Did I pronounce your surname correctly?
English version, yes.
Yes,
English
okay.
version, yes. So Portuguese version is Biscaia. It's a little bit more
lovely.
like using like an X, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, like literally, my name is Beatriz Biscaia. That's the
Ooh.
literally the Portuguese name, the Portuguese
Oui.
way of pronouncing it. But normally I say Beatriz Biscaia because it's a little bit easier to pronounce.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I feel like us English butcher. English butcher the gorgeous language. But thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Such a pleasure to be here.
Such a pleasure. And I've been following you for quite some time as well. Like, I think, a lot of people remember you from being the youngest ever to make the Olympia, and like been following your journey for so long and all the highs and the lows. But do you want to just kind of introduce yourself, the listeners don't know, kind of just your journey to the stage and how you got into bodybuilding so young?
Sure. So as of now, well, my name is, as I said previously, Beatriz Biscaia, or Beatriz Biscaia, as you want to say. And I am now 22 years old, so I'm still very young. And normally people still say, well, people born after the 2000s do not exist. Well, I am one of those. So I was born in 2001. So I am almost 23 in some days' time. And yeah, I got into competing basically because, my dad has always, gone to the gym, if that makes sense. So he always trained. Both my parents are very active when it comes to sports and stuff like that. And also my grandparents, all of that. So it's kind of a genetic thing. So we have always been very connected to everything that has to do with physical activity, sports, stuff like that. And well, with that being said, after being part of some sports such as horseback riding, swimming, and dance, I decided that it was time to join my dad. But my dad is that type of athlete, I would say, that's just as classes and stuff like that. So he likes to be very active. He loves to just go to the gym and be sociable and stuff like that. But well, I wanted to go when I was 14, and I just stick to it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I started just doing some gym classes such as TRX. I don't know if you know it, you might do. It was like such a trend, I would say. So the TRX classes and all that. So I started doing just some stuff like that. So the TRX classes, the spinning classes, functional training, stuff like that. And then I started going to the gym, actually to the weight training section, and I had the training plan, those that you get from the PTs there, those like very generic ones, and yeah, I just started going to the gym, started going like twice a day on my vacation. I was 15 at the time, so I just fell in love with that, to be fair, and it was always a very healthy I always had a very healthy approach when it comes to sports in general, I would say. Of course, competing is not very healthy, but what I mean is that, the approach has always been very, very natural to me. Also, the start of my competing career was very natural to me as well. So I am not that kind of, I don't have those stories, I would say, of, I was a little bit, chubbier, so I went to the gym, or I really struggled putting weight on, so I went to the gym. So I was like, literally, I just wanted to do something, so I went to the gym, and then I started competing because my coach, that is now my coach as well, at the time he knew me through Instagram, and also an athlete of his kind of talked to him about me. There's a girl at the gym that looks like she's got the genetics, blah blah blah, so just check her out. And he basically just contacted me, and we started talking, and he came to my city, because we live in different cities, to give me a glute workout. I hated it, basically. I hated the diet. I hated everything. Didn't want to see the guy anywhere anytime soon. But anyways, I just told him, well, I talked to my parents, and then I told him, Cesar, who is my coach, well, listen, I am 16, so I'm not going to compete because I thought that the minimum age was 18. So I'm just going to wait till I finish high school, all of that, blah, blah, blah. So I just gave him like an excuse to not continue with the competition like idea. But then he did his research and found out that there was a possibility of starting to compete at 16. So he just kept, just bothering me every single day, trying to just, convince me that it would be such a great idea to compete. So then, well, I told him, if you get me a bikini and a pair of heels, I will do that. And I thought that he would not be, able to do that because I think that the national championship would be like 4 weeks away from that conversation. And I thought, well, it's not going to be very possible. So I will just tell him this and see if that sticks. But then he got it like 20 minutes later. So I was like, well, oh shoot, I will have to do it. So that was basically it. At the time, I was very like, those phases of, well, just not wanting to eat carbs, or the less carbs you eat, the better, blah, blah, blah. I was that type of, well, that was my phase at the moment. So I was already very lean and I trained a lot just because I enjoyed it. And yeah, so I was pretty lean at the time. And with that being said, well, the prep was not very extreme, I would say. So I just kept my condition, I would say. And then I competed. I placed second in the junior category. And then I thought, well, I will just keep going. And then I competed till I was 20, almost 21. Not 20. Yeah, 20. Sorry. So yeah, basically that was it. And I just kept competing, all of that. And I kept studying as well. So I am still studying. I'm still taking my master's degree now. So since I started competing, I have never stopped studying whatsoever. And now I work in the software industry as well. So competing is like just it is a very big part of my life. Or prepping, of course, you cannot say, well, it's just a hobby, because it's a 24/7 hobby. But I kind of call it a hobby in a way that, well, my day is dedicated to the software industry because I am, a marketing girl. I'm part of of the marketing department of the software company that I work for. So yeah, basically my life is, well, my fiance, my family, the marketing thing, and then the competition. So I think that's it.
Oh my God. Actually have, I just like, that story is mad. Probably the maddest story.
Oh, really? Do you think
any
so?
pro. Like I just, I think, because I didn't get into competing until I was 22, and I just couldn't imagine at such a young age getting involved in, like, never mind the gym, but actually competing at that age. And I know, and I suppose what was on my mind was, did you, like you said, you had a healthy relationship with it rather than getting into it because the wrong reasons or trying to cure something? Like you obviously did have the genetics and stuff, but was there any stage then when you did, I suppose, enter the world of competing that it wasn't the case, that you did feel like there was a little bit more of an unhealthy relationship, or was it kind of were you still in that mindset at such a young age? Because I feel like when you're that young, it's very, very easy. You're quite naive as well, and you can kind of get sucked in. Like, was there any point in that you felt like it was unhealthy?
I don't think so, also because, as you said, and I think that is very correct, we are very naive. I have always been that type of girl that is very moderate, I would say. So I consider myself as a quite mature person for my age, and I have always been like that. So I have always had friendships with older people, have always had relationships in general, such as, like at the gym, you have like older people, of course. At school, you have other people that can be older. And I always felt it was easier for me to have a relationship with older people rather than my age, I would say. And the exact same thing happens nowadays. Well, my fiance is younger than me, like some months, but he is literally the only person that is part of my circle, I would say, like friendship circle, that is actually my age. So we are literally like just the only ones that are part of that. So with that being said, I was always very conscious of what I was doing. And also my parents were always by my side, I would say. So I always had their support and also their supervision, if that makes sense. So of course I kept studying. First things first, I was 16, so I really needed to keep studying till I finished high school. But then they were in my corner just advising me, well, you need to go to a university, you need to do this, this. Of course, not in a you should this or you must do this, but in a way that my parents are very liberal, if that makes sense. So they have always allowed me and my sister to do everything, but they always talk to us according to our age and according to our behavior, if that makes sense as well. So they have always been there, you know, just advising me and stuff like that. So as I've always had them Cesar, my coach, and all that, well, I have always been surrounded by people that kind of kept me grounded, and that was one of the reasons why it has always been very healthy. Nevertheless, of course, when it comes to competing, well, first things first, it's not a healthy sport because you have to diet a lot. And I say unhealthy because you diet a lot, and I say unhealthy because you restrict yourself mentally a lot as well. So in 3 years, I competed 25 times. So that means that there was a lot of restriction. And especially, well, nowadays, well, there is that trend on Instagram now that, well, you say how many times you've competed, you have been training for how many years, blah, blah, blah. And most of the time I see, well, I have been competing for 7 years. I did like 24 competitions. And in 3 years, I did 25. My last Olympia was, well, my last show, and it was the 25th show. So with that being said, of course, there was some type of restriction. Well, my social life was not really there whatsoever, which I don't think it was a mistake. But at the same time, I do recognize that that was not that healthy. And that, of course, you know, me being so blinded, I would say, by, you know, wanting to compete, wanting to be the best, blah, 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 of course, led to having a little bit of a more
awareness.
obsessive, I would say, more obsessive idea of the sport, which I don't think is bad, but I do recognize once again that that is not that healthy. So of course that evolved to a stage where, well, it was not that healthy, I would say. But it was not a bad healthy. It was, I think that everyone goes through that, and everyone needs to go through that to know that, well, that is the correct way of doing things, and there's another way of doing things. So also the breakup, I would say, that I had with competing made me realize that there is another way of, you know, seeing things and another way of enjoying life, this and that. So I think that it has to happen. Also the binge eating thing, which I know that we are going to talk about as well. The binge eating thing is also part of the process, I think. And I think that everyone, or almost everyone, unless the person is like extremely balanced mentally, physically, everythingly, I think that that will happen to everyone as well, because everyone but I think that everyone will experience that in order to then know what balance is and what, you know, the relationship with food you should have, stuff like that. So I think that, you know, that unhealthy part made me, first things first, well, have the experience of looking at something in a more obsessive way, and now looking back and knowing that it was a little bit more obsessive, because if I started competing now, I am almost sure that I would reach that point as well.
100%.
And if you really want to be competitive, you really need to be obsessive as well when it comes to bodybuilding. I don't say that nowadays, well, now that I'm back to competing and all that, I don't say that I don't want to be, I don't say that I want to be obsessive, because I don't want to. I know that I need to be very restrictive, and I know I really need in this case to be very professional when it comes to the dieting part, blah, blah, blah. But I know that I do not need to be as restrictive and as obsessive as I was previously, because now I have other things in my life. Well, I'm getting married this year, so there are other things. There are other things in my life that I cherish a lot, and of course, competing is something that you need to cherish a lot, of course, but there are other things that are always going to be in your life, and competing is not one of them. And I saw a post of oh god, I can't remember her name now, and I just saw her on the stories. But anyways, a girl that went to the Olympia as well, and she was saying that her blood work panel came back and everything was great. And then she just started emphasizing the idea that, well, competing is great, but she had a daughter, she had a house, she had a husband, blah, blah, blah. And those things are the ones that need her. And if she literally said, if she died tomorrow, the stage would miss her like for the weekend, because she probably signed the contract, but her family would miss her every single day. And that's something that we really need to focus on, because of course competing, and this is not me not being on it at 100%, it's just me being conscious of things. So of course we need to really want to be on stage and really want to be the best, but at the same time we cannot forget that we have everything surrounding us, and I have a job, I have a lot of things.
It's life, isn't it? It's life at the end of the day. And I think
it's a learning experience.
And I think, to be honest, Beatrice, because it's fascinating listening to you, actually, because I know you've said that you've always been quite matured for your age and things like that, but that foresight at such a young age is such an incredible thing to have. Like it's not something that many of us, I didn't start competing until I was 28, 29. So like way later into my sort of lifetime. And even then, like you say, I don't think any athlete, irrespective of when you come into the sport, is immune from finding these things out and learning these lessons. But you turned pro at 17 years old, and you were absolutely catapulted into a professional league. You were catapulted into a community where it's understandable, even at that age, and even with your maturity, that you would be sucked into that in some fashion and bear the brunt, I guess, of being sucked into that in a way. So being able to do that at such a young age, I think, is absolutely fascinating and really quite impressive. But what was it ever so to go back a little bit before we get into the topics that you've raised, because it's everything that we want to talk about. Like all of it. Turning pro at such a young age, Beatrice, was it the goal? Because I know you wanted the pro card and you were gunning for the pro card, but when you got it, what was that like at your age to turn pro and all of a sudden be competing at the Olympia? You got 2 pro wins, and it was just, it's wild. You were one of the youngest professional athletes in bikini to step on stage at the Olympia. How did that feel? What did that have any impact at the time? Has it had an impact after the fact? What was that pressure and sort of success at such an early age like?
Well, I think that, to be fair, I don't know if that is going to disappoint you, but nothing really changed. And one thing that I always said after I turned pro was, you need to be a pro and behave like a pro before turning pro in order to be a pro, if that makes sense. So I have always acted like first things first, I didn't really know what being a pro was, of course, but I did everything as I should. So the diet was to the gram, the cardio was to the minute, the training plan was, to the last exercise, last rep, last blah, blah, blah. So I've always done everything as I should, the water, I don't know, sleeping schedule, this and that. So everything was to the T. And for me, I think that is behaving like a pro at the time. Anyways, I thought that it was that, and to be fair, I think that today it is the exact same thing, maybe with a little bit more balance. But anyways, I think that the basics of things are that. So I have always, been very professional and very responsible with regards to everything that had to do with competing. So after turning pro, I just kept doing exactly the things that I was doing prior to turning pro. So nothing really changed. The only thing, my dad didn't really want me to become a pro, because he thought that I was going to be in the bottom of the
food chain.
Yes, I would say. Thank you so much. Portuguese is my first language, so sometimes it just starts processing, and the output doesn't come out, basically. So thank you so much for the help. But as I was saying, he didn't want me to become a pro because he thought that I was not going to keep winning, and he didn't want me to be disappointed in general, but well, it went well because I won my first pro show. So it was very natural to me in a way that, you know, it was just I was just being myself, and it was just about keep doing what I was doing prior to becoming a pro. So I didn't really feel pressure neither, you know, about going to the Olympia, I think, because I was just doing what I wanted. And of course, you know, I was at the time, I was one of the only people representing my country and all of that. And many people talked to me about the pressure, if I was feeling, you know, pressure that in any way or anything like that. But to be fair, I think that, you know, I was just doing what I enjoyed doing. And I think that nowadays people tend to overthink and complicate a lot on things, whereas like competing and bodybuilding is for the majority of people just a hobby. And you need to look at it as a hobby because it needs to add to your life, not to take away from it. And that is
100%.
my kind of mantra. This is very like quirky, but this is kind of my mantra for now, which is it needs to add to my life. And the moment that it starts just taking it away from it, that is a sign that I need to well just take an off season or something like that. Because well, for some it is a job, of course, and if it starts being a job, of course you need to start looking at it and treating it like as such. But if it's not, and if you know have other things in your life, you know, if you have a job, if you have other things that you love to do besides bodybuilding, I mean, it is just as simple as dieting and going to the gym and doing your cardio and resting, to be fair. So there's not much to it. Of course, it is something that requires a lot of dedication. So it is something very taxing and stuff like that. So I totally understand that. And I have been through that multiple times. But I think that overcomplicating that and feeling pressure and feeling, you know, a lot of things, whereas it's just a hobby and it's just something that it needs to be there to make you happy. If you don't complicate those things, if you don't overthink about those things, it's naturally going to be more streamlined, if that makes sense. So it does not need and it will not streamline your life, nor the processes, nor anything like that. But it needs to bring you happiness, you know. So if you complicate that, it's not going to bring you happiness at any point. So to reply to your question, well, it was, to be fair, very natural to me because I just kept doing what I loved and what I love, but I'm still, you know, learning how to love that anyways, because it is such a big adaptation for me right now. But I was just doing what I knew to do, you know. So I was studying at the time, so I had like school and then I had competing, and I loved competing, so I was just literally doing what I loved to do. So it was very simple to me. It was just about, you know, being myself, about doing what I loved, and trying to be the best that I could be. So with that being said, I was always very, you know, okay, very chill, very, you know, no pressure at all. I am that type of athlete that sleeps before stepping on stage as well. So whenever you see me, whenever you see me in the backstage, if I don't talk to you, it's probably because I'm just very sleepy or literally sleeping with my headphones, because I'm that type of girl. I'm very like chilled and stuff like that. So that's kind of my vision, and that has always been my vision when it comes to competing. It's just like very natural. And the more well, the easier way to do it is just to not overthink it, you know, which sometimes is very difficult, but it is something that you need to keep like trying, because if you start just, you know, overthinking about, well, my water retention, well, my this and that, well, I don't look good. Of course, I thought that I was not looking good when I did this last mini cut. I thought, well, I am not looking good enough. And now I look back at the pictures and I looked really good. So I know that it can be very tricky and that we can overthink, you know, very easily, especially as women. But at the end of the day, it is just something that, well, and I'm repeating myself, but at the end of the day, it is just something that needs to bring joy to your life, and that you need to
value.
exactly. I mean, yes, you do your fasted cardio. Why? Because you feel productive,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
feel like it's a good start to your
It's
day.
part of your
It's
lifestyle
not
already before you even
exactly,
compete. Yeah, you've really hit the
exactly.
nail on the head. I think I always say that like it should add to the quality of your life. And I think it shouldn't be everything that you do.
No.
And I think because you were so young, it could have very, very easily gone that way. And I suppose like because you brought up that it's like it was kind of like your side hustle as well. But a lot of people these days, even amateurs, make it their full-time hustle, and it's everything they do and it's everything they think about. And obviously there's pros these days who like competing is their job, it's their everything, and they rely heavily on it to get a career. And they, you know, they speak about it all the time, how difficult it is. Like, yes, you have these sponsorships, but it's also very expensive to compete as a pro, and it's very expensive as an amateur. Like, and I think, did you ever have that in your head that, you know, at such a young age, okay, I want to maybe go down that route of making money through sponsorships and all that kind of thing? Because it probably was easy to do that as well, or to think that way, and that was going to bring you success. But you didn't. Obviously, you stayed with your masters, which you don't tend to see that often. Like you don't really see
No.
many pros that have a career outside or are still in studies, because it demands so much time, and they place all of their eggs in the basket of competing. So did you ever struggle with that, like throughout that period of time? Were you ever tempted to go down the route of like just being a bikini professional, sponsorships, all that kind of thing?
I think that everyone goes through that as well.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, I was probably like 17, and when I was about to finish high school, I think I thought, well, I have a double citizenship, so I'm half Canadian, and I thought, well, I'm leaving Portugal, peace and love for everyone. I'm leaving, I'm being an athlete full time, blah, blah, blah. And my coach was, of course, just supporting that and say, well, we are going together and da, 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 and we are going to prep there and all of that. So I think that everyone goes through that also, because it is, well, you really want to do something that you love for the rest of your life, right? But
Yeah.
one thing is if that thing is sitting on a, you know, a chair and being on your laptop, and it's something that you can really control and it does not change your life majorly, okay, I think that it is something doable. Nevertheless, when you want to do something for the rest of your life, and that is something that is really stressing when it comes to, you know, it stresses your body, stresses your social life, it messes up with, well, I want to have a kid, now I need to stop being who I am. And also, when I stopped competing, the thing that I struggled the most with was I kind of lost my identity, because I was like, Beatriz Biscaia, IFBB Pro. So that was literally my definition, and I was not something without the IFBB Pro. So that's how I kind of valued myself. So the value that I had was intrinsically like with the IFBB Pro title, I would say.
Yeah.
And when I stopped competing, when I finally made that decision, that was the thing that I struggled the most with, and I think that was the center, I would say, of the snowball, which makes me, of course, agree with you, because I think that nowadays the problem is that people who really want to compete, and especially newbies, don't know how to talk about anything else. You know, politics, you try to talk with them about politics and they're like, what is that? Or economics, they're like, no, I don't really want to care about it. Or
bodybuilding,
anything that is, you know, out of that bubble, out of that training, nutrition, bubble, which sometimes it's not even nutrition, it's just like macros and micros and stuff like that. But besides that, it's not really that deep. And when it comes to training, it tends to be a little bit deeper. But to be fair, the idea that I had about bodybuilders, it's not a stereotype, but based on the interaction that I had with them, was that, and I was like that when I competed. So I'm not being hypocritical or anything like that. So I was like that. And that's why I recognized, well, looking back at, you know, how I dealt with people, how I dealt with, you know, these topics. That's why I'm saying, well, politics and economics, because I was like, what the hell is that? You know, when I competed, being like that is the reason, the fact that I was like that is the reason why I can now recognize that that is not a good thing, just because I experienced that. And and not many people, it's not many people, but not the majority. Well, I would say not all of the bodybuilders are like that. So of course there are some exceptions, but in general, I think that they just focus on that. And if you go to their algorithms, for example, so the Instagram algorithm is all bodybuilding. So the YouTube is all bodybuilding, TikTok is all bodybuilding. And I think that is such a loss, because everyone has, different talents in life, I think. And if they just, if they feed themselves, from one source only, I think that is such a loss, I would say.
Limiting.
But
Very
at the same
limiting.
time, I totally understand, and I have been through that. And to answer to your question, yes, I really wanted to be an athlete full time, and I was that. So of course I was studying, so that was not the common case, because normally people have, are older, so of course sometimes they have their kids, sometimes they have their home, they already work. So I was, of course, under my parents', responsibilities. And even when I turned 18 and 19, of course, I was under their responsibilities anyway. So under their roof and under their, the electricity, everything was paid by them. So that was not really the case of, well, I really want to be an athlete full time, and then I need to, just leave my job and, be an athlete full time and just dive with my head, basically. So that was not the case, but of course I wanted to be that, and I was able to do that. Well, of course, Portugal is not the exact same thing as the UK or the United States when it comes to the income, but also about the expenses. So of course, what I earned with my sponsorships was enough for me to to live, I would say, in Portugal. So that was okay with regards to, well, just being an athlete full time and all that. But once again, well, I really wanted to be something else and not be the exact same thing as everyone else. So that's why I kept studying. And then I went to university, and I got my degree in languages and business affairs. And then, well, I stopped competing when I was in the second year. So I finished the second and the third year, and then I jumped to a master's in marketing just because I wanted to, expand a little bit more. But even if I was competing, I would probably do that because I don't really want to be put in the same bag as the other people, which, well, I do recognize it is something very common, because it is something that requires a lot of dedication. So it is actually well expected that people consume that a lot, and you learn a lot through those videos and through those algorithms that I mentioned previously. But people need to be a little bit more talented when it comes to, being able to talk about many things, being able to, have a conversation that is not about meals and training plans and the bodybuilding industry, because it's so tiring, to be fair, because we all know each other. So it is a very big community, but at the same time it is very small, and you kind of know everyone. So whenever I get together with people from the industry and people who have always been competing for like 5+ years, those people just talk about bodybuilding, and that is very tiring. I'm like, please talk about like the, I don't know, the elections. Talk about the elections, please. Because
did you eat something different last week? Like, tell me anything.
Oh, it was like,
it's crazy.
Oh my God, yes, like it's all about training plan. It's all about PEDs. Then the PED conversation starts. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, I don't want to talk about PEDs.
Here we go.
It's crazy.
It's just like a loop.
Like there's so many avenues of us as people, and I think like
exactly,
like you said, we love bodybuilding, and that's amazing. We can be dedicated, but like there's another part of us, and I used to get like that as well. Anytime I came home to family, it was so refreshing, and I went out with friends that weren't involved in the industry whatsoever. And I think that is the issue, is a lot of people just they're so invested, and I think you're able to appreciate the lifestyle a lot more and able to appreciate competing when you actually have a little bit of a life outside of that. And like you said, that doesn't mean that you just go eat whatever you want. It just means that you might talk about something different, or just spend a little more hours in your day watching something else. Like on my feed on YouTube, it used to, when like you said, I used to be like that, like tunnel vision. I'd only watch bodybuilding YouTube videos, and now I watch like diverse range of things on YouTube. And
that's
I'm able
how you
to
know you're healthy.
but that's it. But like you said at the start, you have to go through that, then come out the other side and be
To
like, okay,
learn.
there's actually
Yeah.
more to
100%.
life. And I
Yeah.
actually love competing so much more because I can take a step back from it. It's like a little bit of a
More
holiday,
facets.
because it, like you said,
Yeah.
it's a lot of people's job. And especially if you're an online coach, it's all you're doing, or you're a prep coach or whatever, and you need to be able for it's just healthy to take a step back from
Yeah.
it. Doesn't mean
It's
you're
like
any
being a
less
personal trainer.
dedicated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You are just feeding yourself from like other sources, I would say. And that is like very beneficial, because it makes you, have, as you said previously, the avenues that you can have or take as a person,
Yeah.
it's something that needs to be in your life, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's something that helps you along the way, because bodybuilding is not going to be there forever. So as a woman, you're gonna reach like maximum like 50. And let's say I'm 22. If I start competing now, if I compete for 8 years, and 8 years I will be 30.
Yeah.
Do you imagine 20 years on top of that? I mean, I do not
Exactly.
imagine that.
No.
I mean, I can do that anyways, I think, but like literally can do it. Yes, the ability to do that.
Physically.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there is a possibility of doing
Yeah.
so, but I don't think that I will be doing that, to be fair. And
No.
whenever, you have those, the generation of people that is competing now. So you have the 30, then the 20, the 40. Let's say that someone in their 35, 5, 6, 7, if when they stop competing in like 3 years' time, what will they do if they don't have anything else in their lives,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
It
don't
goes
really want to.
back. Sorry, it goes
No
back to what you
worries.
said about the identity thing, doesn't it? Because I really resonated with that in particular, because my year's been like really pulled away from bodybuilding, with the exception of like being involved in the podcast. So I think from an identity standpoint as well, and we can talk about like how that impacted you on a wider sense in terms of actually pulling away from bodybuilding after competing for such a long length of time, loads of shows in a really condensed space of time. That was all you did. That identity, that fallout, without anything else to fall back on yourself. Like, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be an activity. It can be an interest, something you enjoy doing, something that you draw value from. Without that there, you do feel incredibly lost, incredibly empty, and like you don't have anything to offer yourself, like to the world, because everything that you drew value from is not there anymore. In terms of like that step away that you obviously you made a decision to take some time away from bodybuilding, in the sense of competing. You were competing for such a prolonged period of time, in very acute, like sort of show to show. It was quite close. What other things, because you said that was the center of the snowball, were there any other considerations at that time that made you think, right, okay, this is getting perhaps a little bit too unhealthy, this is impacting my quality of life, or X, Y, and Z? What were those things? How did you sort of arrive at that decision at that time?
So as I said previously, it was kind of a snowball. So when I did a show, the Europa Pro. I think it was in October or something like that. September, October, something like that. And prior to that show, I decided that the best idea was to get another coach. And well, the idea that I have about it now is that it was for literally no reason. But that led to me having the rest of the year. That led me to have or experience a very bad rest of the year, if that makes sense. So different coaches, different countries, because we were in the middle of a pandemic. So I needed to go to Dubai by myself for 2 weeks for like a quarantine before going to the States to compete at the Olympia, because I qualified at that show. But it was very, it was not in my comfort zone, if that makes sense. But one thing is being out of your comfort zone in a range, I would say, that allows you to grow. Another one is being so far away from your comfort zone that you just feel absolutely lost, and like I'm just going with the flow because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So that was kind of, the environment that I was in. And well, I was surrounded by people that didn't really want the best for me, I think. At least that's my idea right now. And the way that I look at that topic as of now. So that made my life quite difficult, I would say. So it was very like irregular. It was very just all over the place, I would say. All over the place, every state in the United States, then a lot of homes or a lot of like places to be at, a lot of gyms, like different gyms. And as you know, well, you have prepped before, well, if you are stable and if you have a gym, if you have, you know, a supermarket, and this is so limited. Now I'm saying this, I'm like, well, oh my God, you're so sad. But you have a gym.
No, but it's disruptive, isn't it? That's it. It's disruption to your detriment in the end.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that, well, your stability comes down to a home, a gym, and a supermarket, you know. So like that is quite sad, to be fair.
No,
but, well,
I have my favorites. I have my favorites.
I do have my favorites, and I love to, you know, I love to go to the cafe that I go to every single day. I love to go to the supermarket that I go to every single day. But you know, the stability of a person that competes comes down to those 3 to 4 things, 3 to 4 places, including, of course, the country and the people that surround you, of course. So with that being said, everything was very unstable in my life, and I was very far away from my parents. And everyone that knows me a little bit more, or you know, that follows me on my social media, knows that I'm very close to my parents. So what happened was, well, I was very far away from them. I used to call them at like 6 a.m. my time, and they were already, you know, just going with their lives and out of home and this and that, because, you know, there was a very big time difference. So it was very just random. It was very, very random rest of the year for me. And with that being said, well, we have to include here the fact that my placings were just, you know, decreasing, if that makes sense. So I did 2 shows in the States. One of them I placed 5th, the Texas Pro. I'm going to say Texas Pro. It was in Texas. Battle of Texas, better saying. And then I did the Olympia, and well, it was not the best show for me as well. So after that, I was like, well, I really need my parents. I really need my home. I really need my country. I really need, you know, to listen to some European Portuguese, please. So I was just, you know, missing home so much and missing my routine and missing, you know, my family, that I just didn't really want to have anything to do with bodybuilding, I would say. And then there was Christmas, there was, you know, New Year's Eve, then my birthday as well. So I was like, well, like, I just need to disconnect from everything. I need to detox from everything. And that added to the fact that I really needed to sort my hormones out, not because of PDs whatsoever, but because I was experiencing amenorrhea for 5 years. I was like, well, maybe I will want a kid someday, so I might need to sort this out, because I'm 20. Like I'm almost 20. I was 19 at the time, like almost 20, but I'm like 20. Like I should do something about it, or at least check this out, and not just like ignore that I'm not fertile or anything like that. So I basically, well, everything put together, I was like, I don't want anything to do with bodybuilding. I'm in quarantine. I really want my family, the festivities, and the fact that I thought, well, maybe there's something going on inside of me, and I really need to sort that out. I'll probably need to sort that out. Well, those things combined, there was nothing, you know, related to bodybuilding specifically, like PDs or blah, blah, blah. So I was just like tired of that. So I was just tired of that environment and tired of, you know, all of those things, plus not placing as I wanted. And, you know, looking at myself and seeing, well, this is not the best package so far, and I have been competing for a long time. This is not a good sign. So those things all put together, those built the snowball. And the fact that we were in quarantine, plus the festivities, of course, that led me to eating like a shit ton of food. And I rebounded like 20 kilos, and I'm 158 centimeters, so I'm 5'1". So yeah, I was like, well, I'm just going with the flow. I know that I'm, you know, I have something that is related to binge eating. That was not like clinically like diagnosed or anything like that. So it was very light. And to be fair, if I look back, I kind of describe that as binge eating, but at the same time, I think that that is just a common consequence of being very restricted. So I don't know to what point it is actually binge eating. It might be
Mhm.
close, but maybe it was not really that deep.
I think with the hormones as well, Beatrice, like if you hadn't had a period for such a long time, like that's a substantial amount of weight gain for your body, as in like not a substantial amount, but for your body and what your body was used to. So your hormones were probably kicking in at that point and thinking, oh, okay, we're in a different environment now. Maybe this
Should
is
I
working.
function?
Maybe this is okay. Shall
Should I
we
start
come out
working
now?
now?
Like,
Exactly.
yeah, but like, and physiologically, that, I mean, again, like we all have a cycle, and we all go rage into the fridge the week before because we think our neck's been cut. So like, again, like it's another thing that could be attributed to the fact that your body was just trying to regulate because you were still so young as well.
Yeah, exactly. So those things, just led to me thinking, well, maybe the best decision is to stop competing. And that was basically, such a heartbreak and the breakup for me. I cried a ton. Like the flight back from the Olympia, I cried like every single time, that if anyone mentioned the Olympia or competing or anything like that, I would start crying my balls out, so my eyeballs out. So with that being said, well, it was kind of, that's why I said, and I use the analogy to, the snowball, because that was a lot of, aspects that led me to decide that maybe it would be the best idea to, decide that I should stop competing. So yeah, then, well, I rebounded and I thought, well, I need to make sure that I start regulating, but I think that I will not regulate if I do not allow myself to actually be free for like the first time in 4 years, more or less. So I thought, well, I'm going to eat whatever I want, whenever I want. I will decide at the moment. So I kind of respected myself in that sense and thought, well, the leptin and the ghrelin will figure that out themselves, and I will eat and they will figure themselves out. That was literally the thought. And
That's
well,
brilliant.
that's what I did. I did not recommend anyone doing that, not because it was not a good experience. I think that was the best solution at the moment. But and I think that given the fact that it was not, it was not like 30, 40, 50 kilos, it was 20, and it is something that came down naturally. So if you multiply that by, I don't know, like 2 or 3, of course, that's not going to be very good. But in my case, I think that it was the best way of just, making sure that everything was going to be okay in a year time. And then I started dating as well. So I started socializing after I stopped competing. And anyways, I met my fiance when I was 18. So we were colleagues at school. So I just started socializing, then I started dating, this and that. And as the time went by, when we reached like, I would say like a year of relationship, that's when I thought, well, okay, I'm feeling that I solved that ghrelin leptin problem. And I lost a lot of kilos. So I gained 20 and I lost probably like 13 to 15 just naturally, by just decreasing the amount of food that I was eating, just because I was not feeling hungry or even forgetting about eating, so which, well, in a good way, just because I was not, thinking about food or anything like that. And I was just focusing on other things. So yeah, I think, well, the light is always at the end of the tunnel anyways.
I
So
know. You eventually do regulate though. And especially like we said, when you're socializing with other people, like the habits and stuff are different. You're not tied to that kind of restriction and mindset as well. But I suppose like you said there, like when you thought of competing or anybody said it, you got really, really upset. Why was that the case? Did you feel like you didn't get what you wanted out of it? Did you feel like you were letting people down, like with that? Like, where did the upset really come from?
So at my first Olympia, I placed 12th, which for me was, well, it was great. And then, and my second one, well, I did not have expectations, but everyone around me was expecting me to crack the top 10. And well, when others expect that and, just reflect that, well, they just direct their words to you. Well, you kind of start believing in that as well at some point. And I was kind of expecting to do better either the same or better at my second Olympia, and that did not happen because I placed 20th, if I'm not mistaken. So that plus, being, as I said previously, being away from my parents, all of those things, just not being in my environment, knowing the people that were surrounding me, but at the same time not knowing them really, not knowing the place, not knowing anything, not being autonomous as well, because I drive, I do all my things by myself if I need, and there, well, I could not drive, I could not have a car, I could not do anything by myself. So it was very, very out of my healthy zone, I would say. So I think that everything led into that kind of disappointment, I would say. But above all, I disappointed my own self because I knew that I was not, at my best, and I should be at my best because, I was a professional athlete. Also, and I remember this now, so I should have mentioned it previously, but for the Texas, the Battle of Texas, and also the Olympia, I started noticing that I was like that my mindset was lacking a little bit of professionalism, if that makes sense. So when you have like 200 ml of water to drink like at that specific moment in the day, I was like, well, I'm gonna take another sip, so, and those things, well, of course you can be listening to these things, especially the listeners may think, well, this is nothing really, I mean, it's water, but at that point, it is something that matters, and it is something that I was not capable of doing till I started changing coaches. So if I do think that if I was not that tired mentally, because physically I think that I was not tired anyways, but if I was not that tired mentally, I would not be lacking that professionalism, I think, and when I changed coaches, everything changed a lot. So the food sources changed a lot, not the training plan, because I was the only one, just doing my training plans as always, but the cardio was changing a lot. The cardio methods were changing a lot, the times. And I was someone used to, being very restrictive with food. So I was that kind of person that the diet was just like cucumber and fish. And my coach was like that. He's not like that anymore, but he was very restrictive at the time. And when I changed coaches, like everything changed. Like started eating salmon, started eating this, started eating that, started using, very weird food sources for what my body was, able to digest, able to assimilate, if that makes sense. So there were a lot of changes that kind of made me, just smoothen out. Also, the PEDs were down, but in a way that, it was almost none. And I was already doing next to none, but I was doing well, it was almost none, but it was very like illusory, if that makes sense. So that, at the Olympia, of course, is something that is not going to work. Then the water load was not something that was working to me as well. The carb up was not something that was working for me as well. So I actually, I think it was for the Texas Pro, I'm not sure, but I didn't do a carb load. I did a fat load, which was incredibly weird. So all these methodologies that, well, can make sense sometimes, but that didn't really make sense to me at the time. Those were things that kind of led me to a very big amount of insecurity, not in myself, but like it was just not my zone, I would say. So that, it was a lot of there were a lot of aspects that contributed to that, and that made me realize that that was not the best choice for me, and that I was not presenting my best package. And being like the oldest that I was at the time, and with the amount of shows that I had in my pocket already, my second Olympia, I should not be that soft, I should not be that looking like that, so of course I knew that, and I knew that before I was stepping on stage. And also the feedback that they gave me, that Tyler Mannion gave me at the Battle of Texas, was that I really needed to gain some muscle, that I should take like 2 years off and gain some muscle. And I was like, well, I'm going to compete at the Olympia in 2 weeks, so I cannot really change that. So I was already like just not feeling motivated whatsoever for the second Olympia. So a lot of aspects that led me into feeling disappointed, but that was needed.
I think thinking about your mindset as well throughout this, because it seems like you had a pretty bulletproof mindset with competing, even turning pro, very present, very aware, very stoic in the way that you carried yourself, even as a young athlete. So I think it must have dawned on you at some point that you were just like, my heart's simply not in this. Like, things aren't moving the way that they need to. I know I feel unsettled. I no, this is time to pull back. And I think even having that self-awareness whilst you're in it, because it's quite easy to sort of dig your heels in at that point, I can imagine, especially at that level. When you're a professional, you're competing at the Olympia, you're like, no, I'm not giving up. This is enough. Like, I'm just going to keep burying myself. Because I mean, I've had those feelings before, and I'm an amateur, and it was just from show to show in terms of proving my self-worth and what I could bring to the stage. So did that ever cross your mind? Like, was it very much okay, these things aren't going to plan, to no? Or did it ever come into your brain like, should I give up? Should I kick a little bit harder and push myself that little bit harder? Did that ever sort of come to you?
I think that it was never in my mind until until I was not in the top 10 at the Olympia, you know, because I went to watch the finals and I couldn't watch it because I started crying like crazy. So I was like, Jesus, my heart is of course broken. So that was not that was not in my mind at any point until I actually realized that that was kind of a turning point, I would say. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I am that kind of person that really pushes through and doesn't really want to give up or anything or stop. Not give up, but I don't really want to stop. And doing like 25 shows in 3 years kind of reflects that. And I did I think that I did 8 shows till I back to back till I got pro at the same year. So it's like every 2 weeks I was at a new country doing a new show. So I have that kind of mentality where I do I go to an extreme and I reach an extreme and I really want to break it and go above it and do more. The exact same thing happens nowadays with the work, with everything that I do. But when I realized that I was not good enough, and that is kind of what kind of broke my heart, I think. When I realized I am not worth of being in the top 10, I was like, no, I should really just rethink. But my focus was on the I think it was on the 20th of December or something like that. So I was going to fly back in 2 days, 2 days after the Olympia. So my focus was on, I really need my parents, I really need my home, I really need Christmas and some time off. Some time literally disconnected, and I don't want to hear about bodybuilding. I don't want to have anything to do with bodybuilding. So that was kind of the turning point, I would say. And that was the only moment where I thought, well, maybe I should stop. But the real moment where I thought, well, I think I want to stop was in January, because I still got a new coach in January, just to make sure that I could, maybe I can do something, or, produce some result out of these things. So I anyways got a new coach from Australia, Troy, who is such a great person, and he helped me out with that. But after, I would say 1 or 2 weeks trying to, follow the plan and stuff like that, I thought, well, no, I really need to figure this out myself. And I'm just going with the flow now and see how things go. Also, because in quarantine, you are anyways in an insecure environment, so you didn't really know what was going to happen whatsoever, and we were in a lockdown anyway, so I couldn't train, I couldn't do anything. So I thought, well, this is the right time to just to stop a little bit and all of that. So basically that was it. So while I was competing, I did not have that mentality. Of course, it was breaking slowly because of that water thing that I mentioned. So I've never had that mentality, but when I realized that that was bad enough, well, that's when I thought, well, maybe it's a good idea to just take a step back and sit on the sofa and not walk on the treadmill or something like that. So
I suppose it's an element of kind of perfectionism with you, and it does sound like you're obviously a high achiever, and you did really well in the sport, and obviously with your studies, you aim high, and you come from that background. It was an element of I'm not being the best athlete I can be here. And the step back, although, you know, if somebody like Jade and I, for example, it might look totally different for us to be the best athlete. And for you, you had to go to those lengths for that long and to completely like guard yourself off. And that's going to be different for everybody. So they can,
Yeah.
you know, be the best person or come back and be the best athlete. And that might take 2, 3, 4, 5 years or however long. And some people have kids and then go back to it. And that's the right time for
Like
them.
Angelica, for example.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just like all of our journeys look so different and how we need to show up eventually as the best bikini athlete. And Jade is a similar journey this last couple of years. But do you feel like you're at a place now that not I don't want to say the word healed, but do you feel like mentally all aspects of you as an athlete are like pieced together as a puzzle now?
I think that I'm still figuring that out now
Yeah.
because mainly because first things first, well, I have other things in my life that I really cherish and that are above bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Well, first thing first is my happiness, but talking about like additions to my life, well, I have almost husband, which, you know, needs to be my priority in a conservative way, but that, you know, in a lovely way needs to be my priority.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my job as well, which is something that makes me extremely happy, which is I'm very happy about. So with that being said, and knowing that I am more mature, knowing that I, above all, value myself in other areas other than bodybuilding. So as I said previously, well, I just valued myself as an athlete, and I saw myself as an athlete and nothing else. Nowadays, I know that my value is in other areas of my life as well, and that the athlete version of me is just another version, another area, but it is one area. It's not like the entire castle, I would say. It is just a room, I would say. So I know that I am an excellent fiance. I know that I am I know that I am a good, you know, sister, a good aunt. I know that I am a good daughter as well. I know that I'm a good professional. I know that I'm a good friend, and I was not aware of that until I stopped competing. So nowadays, I think that this is just a mature way of looking at things. So I see myself as much more than an athlete, and that kind of makes me always have a step back, if that makes sense, because I know that if I bounce back, I know that I have a net. Whereas before I did not have that net inside of me, and nowadays, like, well, that resides inside of me, if that makes sense. That does not mean that I am not professional when it comes to dieting or going to the gym. Nevertheless, I recognize that I am still adapting to it and adapting to that restrictive lifestyle, I would say, because the things that actually I was about to compete in I was going to compete in February, but I pulled back from that because I felt that was, you know, not the right choice, in a way that I needed time to adapt to, you know, going out with my fiance, not, you know, sharing it, I don't know, like something with him, for example. And I'm talking about like just going to the cafe and sharing something that he asked, and I eat half of it and he eats half of it. And that is something very simple, but that is one of those things that make my life more lovely, I would say. Lovelier. I would say that's something like very small. I mean, I don't mind going to a huge dinner and me being the only person with a Tupperware and eating out of the Tupperware. That does not mess with my mind, but not sharing moments with the people that I do love, my parents, my fiance, you name it. Those are the moments that make it difficult to me. And when I realized that, I thought, well, I really miss that. I really miss going with you. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't go with him, because I always went with him to the cafe, to whatever. I never said no to an event, to a dinner, to anything. And my condition is to not stop living life, if that makes sense. So I will not say no to a dinner unless I don't really want to go, and not because I will have to take a Tupperware with me. But I realized that I was really missing that, and I talked to my coach and said, well, I am feeling tired, and I was actually doing some like 4 days no carbs and all that. So that is also one of the reasons.
Justified.
But yes, totally justified. I know, but with that being said, I thought, well, now that I know that I did like 7 weeks, I would say. So that is almost a prep. I've always done like 8-week prep, so never longer than that. And for me, well, that is a whole prep. So if I could do that, that means that I can actually stick to it and do the cardio, do all the training, do, everything that is needed. So that was kind of a test, and I passed it, and that was fine. But then it was time to, just take a step back, reassess, see if that was exactly what I needed and what I wanted. And that's when I announced that I was going to compete, just after, trying that out once again. So with that being said, well, I do not even remember the question now because I just dived into other things. But
I think you actually put it so well. It was the net. The comment on the net, I was like, that just sums it up perfectly. Is because you have matured and you have literally those foundations and the net of people and just like Jade said, the self-awareness and all of that, and how to just go in to a prep again with a totally new mindset. Because whatever about, competing when you're 26 and then going back when you're 30, like the years that you did it were just so transformative for any in like adolescent, you're going through so much, you need to figure life things out. Like I think for you, that is just such a big change. Now you've met your fiance, it's like it's a totally different life.
I wouldn't be engaged if I didn't stop competing, and I am 100% sure of that, and that's something that I really cherish as well, because of course it would be great to compete again after my last Olympia. If I kept competing, that would be great anyways, but I would not have the mentality that I have now, and I would not have the things in my life that I have now. And that's what sometimes makes it difficult for me to go back to competing, and thinking about, well, I need to leave my balanced life, my free lifestyle, stuff like that. Nevertheless, I want to compete because I want to have a challenge, more than what I have now with work and stuff like that. But I want to have a challenge for myself, and I want to prove myself that I can do it again. And I want to experience different things, and I want to provide my fiance with the experience of, going to the backstage and watching me on stage and stuff like that. So, and also to his part of the family, because they have never, been to a show or anything like that. So I want to provide them with that experience, but especially my fiance, just to make sure that he knows what that is about. And, I just want that.
I love it.
I want that for them, but I want that for myself first things first, because that's how you should do it. But, I want to prove myself that I can do that again, and that I can be good at it. But I do have my boundaries now, which is something that I did not have previously. And those boundaries are the reflection of me maturing and me knowing that my value is outside of bodybuilding, that it is in bodybuilding as well, but it is not solely and exclusively in bodybuilding,
And I think those boundaries essentially are going to protect you, I think, Beatrice, because you're going back into competing now, where you had completely left everything, your soul, your heart, everything on the plane on the way home from the Olympia that time, and you had to gather yourself up and figure out who the hell you were when you landed. And obviously you sought safety from your family and from the people that you knew you could rely on, the space you could rely on. Like, going into it must be so empowering now. Going in and being like, oh no, all of these boxes completely full, completely fine. I'm coming in now a completely different woman with all of my boxes full, and I'm going to bring them to this experience with me and let them experience it with me, as opposed to you coming away from that and going, oh my God, where am I? What am I doing without all of these things? That's something that I feel going back to competing myself this year it's so much more than just what physique you're bringing. It's the person you're bringing, the growth you're bringing, the mindset, the commitment,
totally new mindset.
And it's so empowering.
That's more, to me, that's the best kind of progress you can make as an athlete.
That is because that's personal progress. That's what an athlete should do as a person.
Because I know.
And you are a person before you are an athlete. You are a person, and you are a daughter, and you are a son, and you are all of those things. Prior to being an athlete, then normally people just forget about it and think, well, I am an athlete, and I should be an athlete, and I should diet, and I should this and that. I mean, that is fine. That is fair. And you should do that at some point in your life. But there comes, there is always a time where you think, well, I have something more other than this, and I need to figure that out and then go back to competing. And that's why, for example, I admire Laurelie so much, because she presented herself as she presented herself. But I listened to her podcast with Phoebe, and there was one that she talked about that, well, she just reflected that she has more things in her life, and being lean all year round is not a goal of hers, because she wants to enjoy life with her boyfriend and with her family and this and that. And I mean, people, and I know that because, you know, I am on Reddit and stuff like that, and I see what people say, but people kind of judge the others because they get chubbier in off season because they are literally enjoying their lives. And I'm like,
Yeah.
she is literally having more and, you know, taking more from her life than you.
I mean, you know, exactly.
Think about it twice.
I'm not jealous of your abs right now. Like this person's
I do not have abs right now, but I have like my belly is well fed.
Yeah.
What do you want more? You know,
like...
I train, I am healthy. I laugh with my parents. I laugh with my husband. I like, well, my fiance. I laugh with his family. I laugh with everyone, with my friends. All of those things. I mean, what do you really want more than that? You know, if I was, you know, just an athlete, but I did not have my fiance, or I didn't have the relationship that I have with my parents, which was already very good, but now it is more mature in a way that it is less restrictive from my side to their side, because, you know, because of the meals, because of the, you know, all the things that I needed to do in order to be very competitive and all of that. If I didn't have my friends and if I didn't have my job, I mean, I was just an athlete. Whereas if I have all of those things and I'm not an athlete, I'm not really bothered by that, to be fair. And this is something that, you know, if someone is very much into competing and is listening to this podcast, they might be like, oh, she's not very much into that. I mean, she might not perform well because of that. I mean, well, I could not give a bigger, like, especially in this case, smaller, like, shit about that, because you really need to be okay with yourself before competing. And if you are not okay with yourself before you start competing, you will feel that after you decide to stop for a little while.
It doesn't fill a hole. It doesn't fill a hole. If anything, it really makes that hole deeper and deeper and wider and more isolating the more you get into it. So if you're not feeding into yourself, my God,
I just think it catches up on you, and you lose so much. You lose so much life experiences, meeting valuable people, learning things, you know, traveling, like experiencing different cultures. And it's like, I always think of it as like a massive debt that you're then paying back in life. And it's like you're in your late 20s and you've missed out on all of these really important life events and things that you just need to learn as a human being growing up. And I think I've noticed that a lot with myself after going through a breakup, and just everything that I've experienced the last few months puts a lot of things in perspective. And that my time competing when I was prepping 4 years in a row was almost just like a blur of like just bodybuilding, and all of these things and life experiences are coming back, and I've learned and I've grown so much as a person the last few months than I ever did competing. And I think people forget that we also have a life to live and we need to grow as humans as well. But it's very easy to just have that tunnel vision and shut off all of that, really.
The
and like
easiest
I said,
way to
catches up on you.
compete. Yeah, the easiest way to compete is to be very restrictive. The hardest part is to be balanced. And that's what I am experiencing right now. And I would not have that any other way, to be fair. Because if I decide to, if I go like out of this room and I tell my parents and my fiance, well, I will not compete. I decided that, well, I will not compete. They will be like, okay, fine, just come to the sofa. Let's play some Nintendo Switch or something like that. It's not going to be a big deal for them. They love that I want to compete. My parents love the athlete in me, and they love, you know, all the experiences and stuff like that. So they remember those experiences from me competing, you know, earlier in my life, with so much love. And I love to hear or listen to them, you know, talking about the experiences and, you know, feeling proud of myself. But I know that if I go out of that door and I say, well, I don't want to compete, they will be like, okay, fine.
Sit down. Do you want a meal?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fine. Well, let's eat. They'll like, let's eat. Do you want to order some Domino's or anything like that? They will be pretty much like that. But if, you know, that is, what we really want in life. Because if
Yeah.
I was probably competing, let's say that I'm 30 now, and all I did since I was 16 was competing, I would go through that door and I would not have anyone,
Yeah.
No.
or if I told my followers, they
100%.
would be like, oh
Yeah.
my God, why you don't want to compete? Why? Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they
yeah.
really want me to compete, because they do not go through those things,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do not go
That's
through
it.
prep, and
That's
maybe
it.
they
You've hit the
do,
nail on
but
the head. Yeah.
exactly. So but the baseline is, of course, you need to, if you want, you can compete. You should compete. I always, recommend everyone to compete, to try that out. It is such a great experience. I would not go back to it if it was not great, but you will, if you get very restrictive and very extreme, you will eventually fall.
Mhm.
And you will experience that fall, and it's going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. That happens to pretty much everyone. If the person does not document that on Instagram, that might be happening anyways, because I had people, IFBB pros coming to me and saying, well, I am experiencing the exact same thing, but I didn't see a post of that, because people just deal with things differently. But
Yeah.
the majority of people go through that. So if someone is, starting their competing career, and they are very extreme about it, and they, argue with,
Yeah.
the people surrounding them because
Yeah.
of competing. I have been there. I have done that. I know
Yeah.
how that feels. And
Mhm.
you feel like you are, the queen of your house, because you are competing and stuff like that, and you are doing everything correctly. That is great. You will learn from that. You
Mhm.
might, I hope not, but that is a good thing anyways. That was good for me. So
Yeah.
I don't really feel sad for people going through that, because that is a learning experience.
Yeah.
You will eventually fall down and feel that you hit the floor, that you hit the bottom, all of that. So anyways, you will eventually get up and, just do it all over again with a better perspective. I think that
Yeah.
that's literally how things work with bodybuilding. And even though people might not document that they might go through that, and they
Oh,
will
yeah.
eventually go through that, unless
Mhm.
they are extremely balanced, or unless they have figured out, their lives. Because sometimes people start competing after they bought a house, after they bought a car, after they got married, and after they got kids. So
Yeah.
they have their life, figured out. So
Set.
they can, they can start competing. They have everything. Well, they lived their life before they started
Yeah.
competing. So that is a different scenario. But if you start competing in your 20s, there will be a point where you have to stop. Even
Yeah.
Angelica, she started competing, I think it was at 28 or 29. I do
Yeah.
not remember, but she eventually needed to stop. And maybe she cried, maybe she felt like she was not doing the right thing marketing wise, maybe like sales wise, this and that, or social media wise. Maybe it was not the greatest thing, but I am 100% sure that she would do the exact same thing, even though
Yeah.
she maybe went through some, I don't know, doubts or anything like that at the time,
Yeah.
because now she has two beautiful
Beautiful
daughters, and
babies.
she was
Yeah.
married back then, so she had
Exactly.
something figured out. Whereas
Yeah.
in my case, I didn't have anything figured out. I
Yeah.
was in the 10th grade. I was starting high school.
When you put it like that, Christ. Well, this is it. We've spoken to Angelica as well, and very similar tones in terms of like stepping away, even though she had all of that success and she had a husband at the time. She still felt that identity crash, that,
Yeah.
oh my God, like I'm Angelica Teixeira, like I'm the Olympian, I'm that person, and now I'm going to pull myself away and I'm going to be a mum, and my body's going to change and everything's going to change. And I think, like we said right at the start, I don't think there is any person in this community that is immune from learning those lessons in whatever fashion they're going to roll out, whether it's at the start, in the middle, at the end. Either way, you're going to come to a crossroads at some point and be like, right, okay, is this still for me? Where are my priorities? Where did they land? And where in that list does bodybuilding sit? Because your priorities change on a daily basis anyway, or on a weekly basis. Those things are going to always be fluid. So I think from an advice standpoint, Beatrice very much says like, it very much is the delivery of, you have to be fluid in this as much as you possibly can be.
Yeah.
Treat it and sort of treat it and look at it and take it as you find it. So bodybuilding is what it is at this moment in time, but it will change. Life will change.
Life changes every single day. It's like a job. Of course, maybe our parents have been in the same job, same company for 20 plus years, but nowadays it does not happen that way. Everyone is in well, you can experience being in a company for like 2-5 years, then you change.
Mhm.
Then
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5 years, then you change. And
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
you
yeah.
change fields, and maybe you change industries and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
everything is so fast paced nowadays, and
Mhm.
your priorities change and this and that. I mean, I did not know I was going to be a fiance at 20, 21. Yeah, 20.
Mhm.
Sorry, no, 20. So I
Mhm.
became, oh, Jesus Christ. Yes, I became a fiance when I was 20. So it's been 2 years now, because it was like I was almost 21, but I did not know that when I was competing at 19, I would be like, what the hell? No, I'm not going to be a fiance at 20. Are you crazy? Or I will not have kids at, I don't know, like 20. At 28, I want to compete till I'm 35. That's what I was always saying. And that
Yeah.
changed. I mean, that changed when I was 19, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything is changing. And let's say that I get pregnant. Let's knock on the wood, of course, but let's say let's say I get pregnant. I mean, of course there are ways of dealing with that, but let's say that I get pregnant at 26 instead of 28 or 21, 29, which is kind of like the plan. I
Mhm.
mean, things change, like
Yeah.
priorities
Yeah.
change. Maybe I will want a baby. Maybe I will have the baby maybe later, or maybe like even later than when I'm planning to. Things just change and things happen differently, and that's literally how life gets. And one of the hardest things about being a competitor is that you become so obsessed with controlling every single aspect of your life. Like,
Yeah.
I need to wake up at this time, then I have 5 minutes to do the vacuum, then I have like 45 minutes to do the cardio, so I need to wake up 5 minutes earlier because I need to like put my shoes on, blah blah blah. So I mean, yes, that is doable if you are a student, like I was. I was that kind of person, but nowadays, and that's what I struggled with the most was you cannot control your life, especially when people are surrounding you and you live with other people. And I became
That's
very,
it.
controlling of every single aspect of my life. And I thought that was the way of living. But after you stop competing, you learn how to live actually,
Oh
because
yeah.
things are just not controllable at all.
Yeah.
And even if with work, like you can have like
Yeah.
2 or 3 meetings, one of them will not happen. Two of them will be rescheduled, and you plan your life around those meetings, and then they end up just not happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if
Yep.
it was like when I was competing, I would be like, well, they are wasting my time. I have everything timed in my day. Everything is scheduled. Da, da, da. But that's literally how life is, and
Yeah. Well, I was
you do
just
not
thinking, I just
need
had
to
a
be
quote
mad
in my
about it.
head of like, bodybuilding can be your world, but the world is not bodybuilding. So you
Exactly,
No.
can't, it's like you
Yeah.
can't expect
and that is
everything to
okay.
revolve around it, and like all of your friends to be bodybuilding and everything to align perfectly with that. And it's like, no, most people live normal life, and you have to be able to integrate yourself into that. And that's exactly what you've done, is you've done that incredibly well by the sounds of it. And then when
Yeah.
you do step into competing again, it's like, right, guys, look at this element of my life. It's not the world of
Yeah, and it needs
bodybuilding.
to add to my life, and if
Yeah.
it starts just taking away from it, I'm like, okay, I'm taking like 2 months off, bye, peace. I'm going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work
but it's
like
just
12 hours.
people don't know the world outside
No.
bodybuilding, really.
No.
I
It's
suppose that's really it.
expected. I think
Yeah.
it's expected because it's a very restricted, I would say, industry or community, better saying. So
Yeah.
everyone is very close-minded in a
Yeah.
good way, because it's kind of needed.
Yeah.
But if you see the people that success, for example, Angelica, I mean, she is
Mhm.
not very restrictive. I mean, you watch her YouTube videos, and you see she is around her kids all the time, around her husband all the time. She is not very much into like being that restrictive if you compare to some amateurs, for example.
Yeah.
And you look, as I mentioned her previously, you look at Laurelie. I mean, she is a very, very good competitor, and she sometimes gets very restrictive, as she says in her podcast. But outside of that, she just lives life, and
Yeah.
that is okay. I mean, she will most likely, when she decides to stop competing, she will most likely be okay. Maybe she will have some, I don't know, like dark times, as everyone does, but she will be most likely okay, because she is surrounded by people that she loves, and that love her, and she does things differently than others that are very restrictive, but that at the same time adds a lot to her life. Whereas if you just restrict yourself, you are just not going to have that net
Yeah.
that we've
Yeah.
mentioned previously.
Yeah.
So if I
Such a
stop
perfect.
competing like after my first show, I do not plan on that, because I want everything to be very balanced. But let's say that I stop competing. I mean, I will be okay with that because I have my list of priorities and bodybuilding is not the first one. And I'm glad that it is like that because that means that I have a life, like a balanced life,
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's what it's
Yeah.
you
about.
know,
It's
and
really,
that
that's what
is
it's about.
okay. Yeah. And even if you're an amateur, I mean, if you have kids, if you have, Amy Delgado, I mean, she has a husband, she has a kid. She was the girl that I was mentioning before. I couldn't remember her name.
Yeah, no, you know, I
I'm
had
so
her in
sorry
my
for that.
head. Yeah,
Yeah,
have her
I'm
in
so
my
sorry
head,
for that. Yeah, because I saw her stories. I actually reacted to it because I thought that this is so valuable. I mean, just read it again, please, because she has her child, she has her husband, she lives life, and if she decides to stop competing, at some point she will have that net. You know, she will even have the blood work net, I would say. So she has everything sorted out, and if you work differently, okay, that's fine. Everyone works differently and everyone has a different vision when it comes to life and a different, idea and ideals and ideas as well. So that is okay. But at the same time, I mean, just be a human being and be a sociable human being before, just closing that bubble, because then you will just look around and not have anything else. And that is
mental
my
health
condition
and
for
our overall
exactly
well-being. And it's something that I learned in therapy a lot, was surrounding myself with different people is good for your well-being. Like it really, really, like
you can
that's what
always
we were
be
made to do.
learning.
Like that's what we weren't, like, thinking back to caveman, we weren't competing then. You know, we
No,
were
we were
socializing and learning
surviving.
different. We were surviving, and you were chatting to people and in relationships and, having babies, and that's what it was all about. We weren't closed off in that bubble. It's not natural for us at all.
No,
So we need
and
to
it's okay
very
to
good
be,
for our
it's okay
well-being.
to be restricted, I think, when it comes to, you're 6 weeks out or 8 weeks out or something like that. Okay, that is fine to be restrictive as long as you are not like a shithead, I would say, to the people that is surrounding you, as long
Or
as
even
you
off season, because people do act like that in an off season, which is, I think,
I
really,
am
really
never
crazy.
going. Yes, that is something that is, of course, subjective, and it depends on what the person wants and what the coach wants as well. But when I am in off season, I just eat whatever I want to eat. I go out, not go out to the to the club or anything like that, just because that doesn't fit what I like. But go out with the friends, eat some good stuff. Have some moments with my fiance that does not involve the gym. If I need to skip the gym, that's totally fine. And that is the mentality that I gained throughout the years that I did not compete, because it is okay if you go to a dinner with some friends and you were supposed to go to go to the gym and you ended up not going, or you didn't do your cardio. I mean, that is of course fine. That no one is going to die if you don't do that. So just don't be that restrictive in off season. And of course, if you are going to compete in like 3, 4, 5, 8 weeks or something like that, if things get really restrictive, okay, as long as you are not bad company, because no one is doing that for you, but at the same time you are the one deciding to do that, so the others do not need to be crucified because of that. That's another condition of mine. I mean, if at some point I affect other people's lives because I want to eat my food, or because I want to go to the gym, just because I want to go to the gym, and I could do it at another moment of the day or anything like that, but if I start being a bad company for someone, anyone, just because I am an athlete and I am going to compete, that is not being a good person, I'd say, because that's something that I decided myself, and I was okay not competing. So if I decided that myself, that's because I want to compete, and that if that's something that I want to do, that's something that the others do not need to be affected by.
No, I completely agree. I think at the end of the day, if it's bleeding into your life to the degree in which you are actually pushing people away, you're further isolating yourself. But not only that, you're making other people feel uncomfortable. Other people are carrying the weight of your prep. Like we say it all the time, evidently this is our choice. If you're undertaking a prep, if you want to be active in bodybuilding, you're taking on that choice, you're taking on the responsibility to make sure that doesn't pour into other people's lives in a negative fashion. Equally, you take on the responsibility to make sure that it's not affecting you negatively. If it's doing one or the other or both, you have to reevaluate whether this is the position you want to be placing yourself and other people in, because like we've said, like bodybuilding is not forever. You're going to get to the end of the road eventually, whether it's through physical sort of ramifications or barriers that are put in place. merely age or that you can't physically do it anymore. It's going to end eventually, and it's probably going to end much sooner than your life will end. And if there's nothing to fall back on, if that net's not there, it's such a perfect analogy. You haven't got that net, you're just going to fall. And that it's so much worse to do it when you haven't got the faculties.
Like that, exactly. If you want to be like that, if you want to be a lone wolf for your entire life, that's totally fine. I mean, everyone has different, goals in life. So if you want to be like that, that's totally fine. But if you don't really visualize yourself at 50 being not by yourself, but not being surrounded as you could be surrounded in another situation, just reflect on it, because competing does not have to be a burden. And it is not the center of your life most of the time. Of course, it's, for example, Laura Lee's job, but if she stops competing, she has other faculties that will most likely be able to do something else that will bring her as much joy as competing does. And I'm not taking, I'm not looking down on competing whatsoever. I'm just, having a very down to earth vision, I would say.
Also wisdom, like massive amounts of wisdom and experience. Like nobody else could say it or listen to this podcast and disagree because they haven't gone through it. Like,
someone will disagree though, because some people are so
they haven't
into bodybuilding sometimes, and they're like,
they haven't gone through it
you're
yet.
not good
Like,
enough.
and I 100%, I know there's probably people listening thinking that, but they're not at that life stage. Like they haven't gone through what you've gone to. I know, but like honestly, I say it about every conversation, but this conversation is really, really good and hit home, and I hope everybody listen to it. And I think even coaches, like male coaches, could listen to it and take value, like male bodybuilders as well. I think they're probably not the worst.
We're all human beings,
but they probably I think males maybe struggle a little bit to get in tune with that. But honestly, it has been such an eye-opener as well. Like
refreshing.
You could do your own little TED talk.
Yes.
My goal with podcasts is always to be like very like, I could do take a reels out of this,
but you know what? I was actually just thinking, I'm actually going to really struggle to do like the review, because I'm like, it's just been such a good conversation.
Thank you so much.
Really, and you're so well spoken, and the way just the way you get things out, like you've just hit the nail on the head in every aspect of it. So
thank you so much. I'm so glad. It was a pleasure, to be fair. And I loved it as well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I say that yes, like automatically to Jade.
Do you know what I think is, twice. I think it's going to be like a little therapy session for a lot of people as well. Listening. That's what it's been like.
1000%.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Well, Beatrice, where can people find you if they're not? I know you do posing with the posing portal, like plug everything and every access point, because obviously you will be looking to prep this year as well. So where can people follow your journey, where you're up to, and obviously access your services and things? Let them know.
So my presence is mainly on Instagram, so it's at Biscaia Pro, so it's my surname plus pro, just because of IFBB Pro, and there's no Biscaia available, so I'm like pro, okay, that's it.
Rude.
Actually, I think that the Biscaia belongs to my dad, so
okay,
he does not allow me to have he's the original one, so that's fair enough. So you can find me on Instagram. It's at Biscaia Pro. Then, as you said, Jaden, thank you so much. I work for the posing portal, so I give posing classes there as well, in person and online as well. Then I have my YouTube channel, but it is in Portuguese, and I have my podcast, but it is in Portuguese. So if there is anyone that is Portuguese speaker there, you're most welcome to listen to my rantings and just messing around with some topics. I wish I could
speak Portuguese now just to listen.
I recommend you to learn. Portuguese because it's interesting, and you start if you learn Portuguese, you can talk to Brazilian people from Africa, this and that, and also you have the English part, which is like the very international language, so you can understand many people. I would say like Lisa Piscina, I talk with her. I talk with her in Portuguese. With Angelica, I talk with her in Portuguese, stuff like that, because that's our mother language, of course.
Yes.
But they are Brazilian, of course, but they speak Portuguese, of course as well. So that's mainly
amazing.
where.
Amazing.
So that is mainly it. I'm not
Well done.
very present in other platforms, but I think that's fair enough.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
you've got some
yeah.
covered. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Amazing,
So,
amazing.
thank you
Oh,
so much. It was a
thank you
pleasure once
so
again, and thank you for
much.
inviting me once again.
Pleasure.
Bye,
Thank you.
guys.